Not a soul knew how bad things were. For many years, Arthur watched awful things happen on TV while her own life fell apart. Her last phone call has been made public 15 years after she died. It's even worse than anyone thought. She told her son just hours before she died, "They all lied to me." The shocking things that were said on that call make sense of everything. Her nasty fight with Betty White, the real reason she quit the Golden Girls, and the terrible family secret she kept from everyone for 86 years. It was a surprise to everyone in Hollywood. Bernice Frankel was born in Brooklyn on May 13, 1922, to parents who came from Poland as Jews. Her mother is from Austria and her dad is from Poland. Back then, life was easy and the Jewish society in New York was always busy. But when she turned 11, everything changed. Because they were having trouble with money, her family packed up and moved to Cambridge, Maryland. It was the South, which was divided, small, and full of bias. Bernice moved from a busy city she knew to a small town where she didn't know anyone. In a town where Jews didn't feel welcome, her parents started a small women's clothing store. It became their safe place and a place that didn't feel like a place to be. That wasn't hard enough already, but by the time she was 12, she had grown to almost 5'10". She was tall, had a deep voice, and wasn't what anyone thought a young girl should be. People didn't know what to think of her because she was always cast as the girl in school shows. She felt weird, shy, and by herself. She could have shrunk away, but instead she found something inside herself, laughter. She began telling jokes and making people laugh. She used her wit as both a defense and an attack. People in her class started to call her the funniest girl in school. Those sharp, dry jokes that made Dorothy and Ma famous. She didn't belong in that small town where it all began, but when she was alone, she wanted something very different. She wished she was a short, blonde, and delicate movie star like the ones she saw in mags. She was aware that she didn't look good enough, but she didn't care. Everyone was shocked by how brave and funny her Mae West impression was, especially since she was usually such a shy and serious girl. She used that look at parties and school events from then on. People loved her first real show. Even after decades, she still knew how to do it. She did the same act when she was inducted into the Hall of Fame. She had a few strange turns in her life after high school. She studied medical tech in high school and tried to find a stable career, but nothing worked out. Then, she did something brave. She joined the Marine Corps Women's Reserve during World War II. This had never been done before. Not many women were eager to wear combat boots, especially in the Marines, which were the last service to allow it. She had worked in a food lab and volunteered as an air raid guard before that. Then she joined out of the blue. She said she was meant to start a new job, but she heard that the Marines were looking for women and thought, why not? It was so last minute. Bee did more than just serve. She got up quickly. She asked to go to car transport school after training in the Bronx. It was strange for a New Yorker who probably hadn't driven much, but she killed it. In North Carolina, she learned how to be a good dispatcher and driver. People knew her for being smart, maybe even too blunt. There was a note in her file that said she was rude and pushy, but that she would probably be a good worker if she got her way. Being like that didn't slow her down. She quickly rose through the ranks and was a staff sergeant by 1945. That kind of rise wasn't a fluke. It was clear that she was good at what she did. She tried to stay safe after she got out of the Marines. She got her license as a medical lab tech and worked at Cambridge Hospital for the summer. It made sense: stable work, useful skills, and the economy after the war. But it didn't make sense. She felt dead when she worked in a lab. It wasn't fun. It wasn't her. That small, quiet discovery made her make a choice that changed everything. In 1947, she quit wearing the lab coat and went back to New York to study acting at a different school. That's where things began to take form. She learned from the famous theater teacher Erwin Piscor and from future stars like Harry Belafonte and Walter Matthau. Not only did she stand out because she was almost 5'10", and had a deep voice, but she also had power. After just seeing her, the director gave her big, scary parts. In the show, she was Lady Macbeth, Lysistrata, and Katharina. At first, she didn't think she was good at comedy. She thought she was better at sadness and drama. But over time, she started to be funny, and that's what made her stand out. At the same time, certain things in her daily life were slowly changing. In acting school, she met Gene Saks. As they both pursued their dreams on the New York stage, their friendship grew. They got married in 1950 and were together for almost 30 years. It wasn't just love that brought them together, they were also artistic. As she learned how to act, she took on difficult classical parts in small village theaters. This helped her develop the fierce presence that would one day make her famous. But those early years were not exciting. She had small parts on TV to make money. Big names like Sid Caesar and Perry Como led shows that gave her just the right amount of attention. It also helped a lot that Caesar's Hour paid $650 per show. But it wasn't just about the money. That's where she learned how to be funny, which she would always remember. In 1954, everything was different. It was then that she got the part of Lucy Brown in the three-penny opera in Greenwich Village. It was an animal. The 6-year show made me a real star after I was just a background player. It was meant to be a serious part for her, but something went wrong during one performance of the Barbara song. She put everything she had into it, and people laughed. At first, she didn't understand. After that, it made sense. That was the magic. That was funny. After that, Bea knew how to combine drama and fun in a single punch. Her show was even recorded on DeKalb Broadway, which caught the cutting wit in her voice that became her trademark. It wasn't just a hit show. It was the moment she really showed up. It was also at this time that she learned from the best. It was like taking a master class every night when I worked with Lonya, who is married to Kurt Weill and a Broadway star. On stage, Lena had a quiet power that didn't ask for attention but gave it to her anyway. Bea looked into that. Lenya could walk out on stage, hold her pose, and make everyone look at her. That much power shaped Bea's style. Bea went back to that stage many years later when she was 77 to play Lenya. Her heart felt full at that moment of coming full circle. She often said that she wished Lena had written a book about her life. That work together meant the world to her. Most people didn't know this, but during all of this stage progress, Bea was a bar singer in secret. She played at the Blue Angel, a small but well-known club in Manhattan, in between plays. It wasn't exciting, it was crowded in there. It was an easy time, and the attention wasn't kind, but that's what made it strong. She learned how to beat the beat, hold her breath, and say each word just right every night. Barbara Streisand and Charlotte Rae, two names that would go on to become famous, were on stage with her. The Blue Angel wasn't a side job. It was a place for her to learn. Her first role on Broadway was as Yent the Matchmaker in Fiddler on the Roof in 1964. But before the show even started, the director, Jerome Robbins, took her away and told her something that broke her heart. He said that her part in the story wasn't important and that she should be cut down. It wasn't about them, it was good for the show, it still smelled bad. Arthur is known for having a tough exterior, but Robin's treatment of her made her so upset that she cried during one especially rough practice. She didn't hold back when talking about him years later. She said it straight out, everyone hated him. Even though it hurt her emotionally, she kept going. More than 200 performances of Fiddler on the Roof broke records, and the cast album was a big hit that stayed on the charts for almost 4 years. Even though her part was cut down, it made her famous. After only 2 years, she got a part that would change everything. She played Vera Charles in Maine, the main character's sharp, tongued heavy, drinking best friend. Their song Bosom Buddies stole the show. The stage was lit up by Arthur's deep voice and perfect timing. She was great in the part, and it got her a Tony Award. Something interesting also happened offstage. She became friends with Lansbury and will always be friends. Arthur later talked about it in her one-woman show, and she had a lot of good feelings about those times. After many years, she played Vera Charles again in the movie version, but things didn't go so well this time. Many people didn't like the movie with Lucille Ball as Mame. Still, the role had already become a part of who she was. It's funny, sharp, and heartfelt. It was important to her that the songs she chose for her later shows let her show both sides. The sharp wit and emotional range she had learned in Maine. In 1971, something strange happened to Beau Arthur, who was already a well-known stage actor. The creator of All in the Family, Norman Lear, asked her to play Maude Finley as a guest star. Maude was a strong-willed woman who could clash with Archie Bunker. She wasn't just a guest, she made the show. Even executives at CBS noticed her and wanted to make a whole new show about her right away. That show was called Ma, and as soon as it came out in 1972, Bea Arthur became the voice of a strong middle-aged woman who wasn't afraid to say what she thought. She played a woman who had been married 4 times and lived in New York with her husband and daughter. She became an icon overnight for women who had never seen someone on TV who looked like them. Ma didn't play it safe, though. The show talked about abortion in 1972, before Roe's Wade even became law. Ma's Dilemma was the name of the 2-part show that changed TV forever. Her character was 47 years old, got pregnant out of the blue, and didn't know what to do. The story was real and hard to understand. She and her husband didn't want any more children, but it wasn't easy to make the choice. Her daughter told her about how dangerous things were before they could have abortions. That's what made the episode so powerful. It didn't give an easy answer. It was the first time that a major character on primetime TV made a choice like that in public. CBS was so afraid of backlash that they asked the writers to add a happy neighbor who loves babies to make things even. Millions of people still watched, even though 39 stations wouldn't show it, and many wrote to thank her. She said she wasn't sure she'd make the same choice again years later, but she would never forget how it made her feel. Bea didn't win a big award until 1977, 5 years after the show became a hit and critics praised her. It felt like a long time coming when she finally won the Emmy for Best Performance. She had spent years acting out real issues on screen, like getting older, being harassed, having health problems, and more. She made it okay for women to talk about things that didn't get talked about in comedy before, but she just brushed it off like a bee. She said the award didn't bother her as much as it used to. It was always about the work for her, not the awards. That Emmy, though, showed that she had changed what it meant to be a lady on TV. But things did not always go well. In 1974, Bea cast herself as Vera Charles in the movie version of Mame, the same part she had played on Broadway. But this time, things went badly. Big money was spent on the movie, but it didn't do well at all. People didn't like it. Some people said the movie didn't have any heart, music that stood out, or spark. On stage, Bea's act was great, but on the big screen, it felt awkward and over the top. One reviewer joked that she looked more like a drag queen than Lucille Ball, who played the lead part. Bea later said she felt bad about making the movie. It made her look bad, and while Ma was having a great time on TV, I told her how quickly things could go wrong in Hollywood. Then, in 1978, she quit Ma, which shocked everyone. Even though the show did well, she was done. She said she wanted to leave because she felt trapped. After 6 years, she was ready to take a break. In the end, her son said she just needed some time to unwind. She had given the show her all, and she didn't want to keep going until it was over. Instead, she left while it was still going strong. That same year, she also lost her husband. In a way, it was a new beginning. Bea had always done things her own way, and ending Ma was no different. It wasn't about the scores. It had to do with honesty. When Ma finished in 1978, Arthur didn't go right into another hit. She had a rough patch instead. Even though she was a well-known TV star, Hollywood wasn't sure what to do with her anymore. As times and tastes changed, B's sharply liberal style didn't fit in with the sillier, more escape-oriented programs that were taking over the airwaves. She did a few things. There were guest roles, theater work, and even a new show, but nothing stuck. She felt like she was waiting for years for the next big thing. Her personal life started to fall apart at the same time that her work stopped moving forward. B's 28-year marriage to Gene Saks ended in 1978, the same year Maude did. They had worked together before and raised 2 adopted sons together. That's why the breakup wasn't just bitter. That thing tore through her home life and her work life. Her first marriage was short, but this one had been the focus of most of her adult life. B never got married again after the breakup. She liked being single and began to act like the independent woman she had only played on screen. In 1983, she jumped at the chance to be the lead in a new show called Amanda's. However, things went badly. It was meant to be like the hit British comedy Fawlty Towers, but set in the United States. But the translation messed up something. Basically, the whole point of the first one. The part didn't feel right. It wasn't clear who the person was. Norman Lear, the man behind Maude, told her straight out, "You're not playing anything." After only 10 episodes, the show was cancelled, and B quit, upset and angry. Another strange project came up in her life that same year that no one saw coming. In the Star Wars Holiday Special, you can play Arthur. Yes, really, it was in a world far, far away, and she played a bartender. At the end of a show on Tatooine, she sang a song. Everyone didn't like the show when it aired once, and then it became a legend. But B's strange little scene ended up being the best part. Fans later said that she was the only interesting part. And after many years, her character was even made official in the canon of Star Wars. As all of this chaos happened, B began to focus on herself. Being able to count on TV had become impossible, so she secretly started making her own show. She longed to sing and tell stories in her own unique way. Starting to put it together with the help of her friend Billy Goldenberg, she thought back to events that had shaped her early career. Pirate Jenny was a song that had been important to her since the 1950s, and she was determined to sing it in her own way. Arthur didn't want to be Dorothy's boyfriend. She said no right away when the offer for the Golden Girls came in. She was done with Ma. For 7 years, they were smart, loud, and in charge. She really didn't want to go back to another long comedy run, especially since she knew that Rue M. Lanahan and Betty White were already there. At first, she thought that Ma and Vivan would be meeting Sue Ann and Vin. Same jobs and habits, no thanks, but Rue made everything different. She told B that they were going to change the story. This time, Betty would play the sweet and innocent one, and Rue would play the Southern belle who wants a guy. B stopped for a moment after that turn. She read the pilot, and it was funny, smart, and grown up. She called back and said, "Okay, I'll get off my behind and do it." That was the beginning of one of the most famous TV casts ever. B's friendship with Estelle Getty was one of the strangest things going on behind the scenes. Sophia, her harsh mother, was played by Estelle. In real life, though, Estelle was younger. The makeup artists had to use wigs and prosthetics on her for an hour every day to make her look older. Sophia wasn't much of a figure at first, but that changed right away when producers saw the sparks between her and B on TV. It was magic how they used snark, eye rolls, and the right time. They looked so different that you'd never guess they were almost the same age. By 1988, B's performance was getting a lot of attention. She finally won the Emmy that year for Best Lead Actress in a Sitcom. She had lost twice before for the same part, but now she was there with Betty, Rue, and Estelle. All of them went on to win Emmys. There aren't many shows in history where every important character had their own statue. It showed that the Golden Girls wasn't just liked but also recognized. It was all because of B, who played many roles with cutting wit and depth, now have her quirks. One of them was so strange that it got written into her contract. She wouldn't wear shoes to work. They made her angry. This is what her team did. She could walk around without shoes on as long as she didn't sue the company if she got hurt. Rue, her co-star, had little claws too. She could keep all of Blanche's clothes. But Bea put her comfort first. There are no gum, shoes, or birds. For real, she was terrified of birds and the sound of someone chewing gum. It wouldn't matter who you were if she caught you with a piece. It wasn't safe for even the guest stars. That wasn't acting like a queen. It was just being Bea. Still, Bea was surprisingly sensitive in real life for someone who seemed so sure of herself on TV. Her son once said that she was girly and weak at home, that she was quiet and kind of lonely, and that she wasn't interested in fame or the Hollywood scene. She just wanted her coffee, her newspaper, and some peace and quiet most days. She had friends, but she didn't let many people into her life, and she gave back in a quiet way. People were shocked to learn that she had given $300,000 to a shelter for LGBTQ kids who were homeless before she died. Not even her own son knew what she did. But Bea was not as strong as she seemed. She had had enough by 1992. Things were going well for the Golden Girls, but Bea decided to leave. It wasn't about money. It wasn't being burned out. It was more than that. She thought the writing was off. The jokes were getting old. The worst part was that she didn't like how the show made Dorothy feel. The writers kept using the same cheap shots season after season. Dorothy was too tall, too strong, and not pretty, but the other girls could laugh at their flaws. It hurt because Bea took it to heart. She asked to be written out because jokes about how she looked hurt her deeply. Dorothy had a happy finish in her last episode. Now married and going on. It was a classy goodbye, just the way Bea wanted it. Behind the scenes, though, not everything was pretty. People heard a lot about the fight between Bea and Betty White. They couldn't have been more different. Betty was always happy, smiling, and talking to people in the crowd. That made Bea angry. She thought it was not serious. She wanted to concentrate, like in the show. Betty wanted to be warm. That gap never got smaller. Betty once said, "She was a pain in the neck to me." Bea's son even said that his mom just needed someone to get mad at, and Betty was the easiest person to hit. It made things worse when Betty won an Emmy before her. The stress was real, but they still did magic on screen. Bea Arthur didn't become famous right away after the Golden Girls stopped in 1992. She almost didn't show up at all on the big screen. She only was in 2 movies over the next 17 years. In 1995, one was For Better or Worse. Bea played a strange mother named Beverly Makeshift in a movie directed by Jason Alexander, who was on Seinfeld. She didn't even want her name to be in the credits, which was strange. The movie only made about $40,000 at the theaters. It didn't do well, which is what made her decision interesting. She didn't want money or recognition. Enemies of Laughter, which came out in 2000, was her last movie. It starred Peter Falk as a mother. Some people didn't think the movie was great, but for Bea, it was about the people, the characters, and the work, not the news. Bea did something brave when she was 78, an age when most stars fade into the background. It was her own one-woman show that she took all over the country. It was called And Then There's Bea. It opened on Broadway the next year as Just Between Friends. She sang songs she had always wanted to sing on the show, which was funny and honest. It was like being in her living room and hearing her talk about her life and work. Piano player Billy Goldenberg joined her on stage and kept the beat going. Not only was it nostalgic, but it was also a real show. She even made fun of herself, thanked her gay friends, and spoke out for Vermont's equal rights. She was nominated for a Tony for the show, but she lost. It showed something, though. Hold on tight. She even brought the show back in 2005, not for fame, but to help LGBTQ+ kids who are homeless. That one night raised $40,000 all by itself. That same spirit came out again in 2003 when Lifetime brought the Golden Girls back together for a 90-minute special. It had been more than 10 years since the last episode. But it seemed like time had stopped when I watched Betty White, and Rue Mlanahan laugh and talk about old times. There was only one face. It was Estelle Getty who played B's mom on the show. Because she was having trouble with memory, she wasn't there. Behind the scenes, fans didn't see this. She had forgotten her lines and couldn't remember how to look on camera by the time of the meeting. The show was more than just a look back at old times. It made me think of the real bond these women had, the memories they made, and the change they helped bring about in culture. B wasn't just doing what she thought was right. She lived them. She used her Broadway show to raise money for the Ollie Forney Center in 2005, a tough year for many nonprofits. The center helps homeless LGBTQ+ kids. She didn't stop there either. The center didn't have to close because her estate gave $300,000 to it just before she died in 2009. That gift grew into something bigger. Millions of dollars were given by the city to fix up a building in Manhattan. And by 2017, the B.A. Arthur home was ready to be used. It was like coming full circle. People can find a safe place to live thanks to her name, her heritage, and her kindness. She didn't stop at one cause either. She also gave money to help people with AIDS so they could keep getting help after she died. It hurt a lot when B died on April 25, 2009. She died of lung cancer in her Los Angeles home when she was 86 years old. After 3 days, Broadway did something it doesn't do very often. For 1 minute, every theater turned down the lights. The memorial was quiet, but it still shined with love for a woman who had made people laugh, think, and feel for decades. After that, in September, famous people like Angela Lansbury and Rosie O'Donnell came to the Grand Theater to celebrate her life. Friends talked about old times. Betty White said it hurt more than she thought it would. She said they were like cream when they were together. Adrienne Barraud, who played her in Maude, said it all so well. B was the only one who could hold a moment on TV. Things got strange in 2025, just when you thought her story was over. The Department of Defense took down a website that talked about B's time in the U.S. Marine Corps. A lot of her friends didn't even know she had served. B joined the Marines in 1943 when she was only 20 years old. She was one of the first women to do so. She began as a writer and ended up working as a truck driver in North Carolina. Why did her record get erased when she was a staff sergeant? The government took it down during a purge of material that was offensive to minorities, but people knew about it. Outrage spread quickly on social media, and within days the page was quietly put back up. Not everyone was mad that her job was taken away. Someone thinking it didn't matter made them mad. It did matter, though. After all the protests, B's full story as a Marine, actress, and fighter was put back where it belonged.